Hey guys, welcome back to this channel, The Voice of the Past. In this video, we will unfold the untold story of the Winslow family's meteorite, an alien connection. Before continuing, if you are new into this channel, please consider subscribing to this channel. Let's start. The sky above Willowbrook had never burned so brightly. For a brief moment, night turned to day as a streak of brilliant blue light slashed across the heavens, splitting the darkness like a blade through silk. The Winslow family's peaceful evening shattered in an instant. Their farmhouse trembled under a distant but powerful impact, rattling windows and causing Lily's glass of milk to topple onto the table. A deep, thunderous rumble followed, rolling across the fields like an earthquake. The sound was unnatural, low, guttural, almost alive. It made the hair on James Winslow's arm stand on end. "What the heck was that?" Daniel exclaimed, his fork clattering onto his plate as he bolted to the back door. Evelyn caught him by the arm before he could sprint outside. "Hold on," she said, her voice firm but tinged with worry. "We don't know if it's safe." The tremor faded, but an eerie silence settled over the house. No crickets, no rustling wind, just a strange, charged stillness. James exchanged a look with his wife before grabbing the flashlight from the counter. "I'm going out there." Evelyn's eyes flickered with hesitation. "James, you don't know what it is. What if it's a plane crash? What if there's a fire?" "I just need to see," James reassured her. His voice was calm, but his grip on the flashlight was tight. It landed close. "If it's something dangerous, I'll come right back." Daniel, his face lit with excitement, tugged at his father's sleeve. "Let me come with you." "Please, Dad." James hesitated, glancing at Evelyn, who sighed before finally nodding. "Fine. But you stay close to your father, Daniel." Lily, watching wide-eyed from her chair, clutched her mother's hand. "What if it's a shooting star?" she asked in a hushed voice. James paused at the doorway and glanced back at his daughter. "Maybe, sweetheart," he said softly. "But I think it's something more than that." The journey into the unknown. The two of them stepped outside, met by the cool evening air, which now carried a strange metallic scent, almost like burnt iron. The forest beyond their property wasn't just dark anymore. It glowed, bathed in an eerie, pulsating blue hue that flickered between the trees. James felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had lived on this land for over 20 years. He knew every inch of it. But this was unnatural. They pushed forward through the tall grass, the sound of crackling embers and rustling leaves beneath their boots the only noise in the dead, silent night. The closer they got to the impact site, the heavier the air seemed to become, thick with an almost electric charge. James felt it against his skin, making the hairs on his arms stand up. He glanced at Daniel, who was staring ahead in wide-eyed fascination. "Stay close," James warned. Daniel nodded, his voice hushed. "I feel weird," he admitted, "like the air is buzzing." James knew exactly what he meant. It was almost like walking into the heart of a thunderstorm, that brief, weighty moment before lightning struck. Then they saw it. The crater was massive, at least 20 feet across, carved deep into the earth. Steam rose in thick tendrils from the scorched ground, mixing with the faint flicker of pulsating light at the center. James's breath caught in his throat. There, half buried in the earth, was an object unlike anything he had ever seen. It was smooth, metallic, but not like any metal James recognized. It gleamed under the flashlight's beam, its surface rippling with unfamiliar, shifting symbols, patterns that almost seemed to move, rearranging themselves as if responding to an unseen force. Daniel took a hesitant step forward. "Dad, it's glowing." James instinctively held out an arm, blocking him from getting too close. "Stay back." The object hummed suddenly, a low vibration that reverberated through the air, sending a deep, bone-chilling resonance through James's body. The grass at the crater's edge shuddered, even though there was no wind. And then it moved. A faint, almost imperceptible shift in its structure. The metal surface shimmered, and the symbols began to rearrange themselves, forming what almost looked like letters? Words? A message? James's heart pounded. Was this some kind of government experiment? A piece of advanced technology? Or something else? He swallowed hard and tightened his grip on the flashlight. "We need to go back," he said, his voice low and urgent. But before they could take a single step, a sharp clicking sound filled the air. The object wasn't just humming anymore. It was awakening, and James's grip on the flashlight tightened as the humming intensified. The strange metallic object, if it could even be called that, was no longer just lying dormant in the crater. It was reacting. The symbols on its surface shifted rapidly now, their eerie blue glow flickering like the dying embers of a fire. But this was no natural phenomenon. The clicking sounds continued, rhythmic and deliberate, as if something inside the object was communicating, or trying to get out. "Dad," Daniel whispered, taking an uneasy step back. What if it's alive?" James couldn't answer. His mind was racing. The air around them felt charged, as though they had stepped into the eye of an unseen storm. The flashlight in his hand flickered, the beam dimming for a split second before coming back. A faint hiss echoed from the object, followed by a strange, almost mechanical sigh. The surface cracked, not like breaking stone, but more like peeling metal. A jagged, thin line began to form down the middle, glowing fiercely. James's instinct screamed at him to run. "Daniel, we're leaving. Now." His son hesitated, mesmerized by the unfolding scene. But James grabbed his arm and pulled him back just as the object gave a low, resonating pulse. The ground beneath them trembled. The crack widened. And then a thin black appendage emerged. It was long, almost skeletal, covered in a faintly luminescent texture that seemed to pulse with an internal light. The air grew thick with a strange, static energy, making the hair on James's arm stand on end. Daniel gasped, "Dad, what is that?" James had no answer. The appendage, if that's what it was, moved slowly, deliberately, pressing against the ground as though testing the air. It was unnervingly silent. Then a second appendage emerged. James took a slow, controlled step backward, shielding Daniel. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just a meteorite. It was something else entirely. "Come on," he whispered urgently. "We need to get back to the house." He barely got the words out before the object pulsed again, a deep, thrumming vibration that shot through the air like a shock wave. The lights in the house flickered in the distance. Even the stars overhead seemed momentarily dimmer. James grabbed Daniel's hand and turned to leave. But before they could take more than a few steps, an inhuman noise filled the air. A sound unlike anything James had ever heard. A low, distorted, clicking voice, as if something was trying to speak. The object behind them shuddered, and from within the cracked metal shell, something shifted. A shape. A form. Something was coming out. James didn't wait to see what it was. "Run!" James yanked Daniel's arm, forcing him to move, his boots crunching against the scorched earth as they scrambled away from the crater. But something held them in place. A force, not physical, but something unseen, weighed on their bodies, heavy like pressure before a storm. James struggled to move, his muscles stiffening, his breathing shallow. Daniel gasped beside him. "Dad, I can't." James gritted his teeth. Whatever this was, it wasn't natural. Behind them, the thing in the crater was emerging. Through the widening fissure, the appendages moved with slow, deliberate precision, their translucent, webbed texture pulsating with light. More of the blackened, metallic shell peeled away, revealing something beneath, something alive. Then, a head surfaced. James didn't want to look, but he couldn't not look. The head wasn't insectoid or reptilian, like the creatures from science fiction. It was smooth, dark, and almost semi-liquid, shifting and reforming as if its very shape was undecided. Two glowing white slits where eyes should be flickered open. And then it spoke. The air around them shuddered as the sound of the voice rang out, not from its mouth, but from inside their heads. Jirash, Jinor Velkar. James's vision blurred for a split second. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. The words, if they were even words, echoed in his skull, foreign and ancient. Daniel let out a sharp breath. Did you hear that? James nodded. His mouth was too dry to speak. The creature in the crater shifted, its form stabilizing slightly, as if adjusting to the atmosphere. The glowing symbols along the broken shell of its ship pulsed again, shifting, rearranging, like it was transmitting data. James forced his legs to move. The invisible weight keeping them frozen was fading. They needed to leave now. "Come on," he said, grabbing Daniel's wrist. They stumbled forward, nearly tripping over themselves as they bolted toward the trees. Behind them, the creature didn't follow. Not yet. Instead, it watched as if assessing them. The humming sound from the crater began to change, shifting into something more urgent, almost like an alarm. James didn't dare turn back. They reached the edge of the forest, breathless. But as they ran, the sky above them flickered, just for a second. A ripple, like a tear in reality itself, stretched across the horizon. And then, from far above, deep in the night sky, something else blinked back, something watching from beyond the stars. James grabbed Daniel and ran faster. James and Daniel burst through the tree line, their breath ragged, their chests heaving. Behind them, the faint glow from the crater pulsed, casting eerie shadows across the ground. But the creature, it hadn't followed. Not yet. James didn't slow down until they reached the farmhouse. He threw open the door, dragging Daniel inside before slamming it shut and locking it. Evelyn and Lily were already on their feet, eyes wide with concern. "What happened?" Evelyn demanded. "James, what did you see?" James braced himself against the wall, trying to catch his breath. He could barely process what he had just witnessed. A living thing, something not from Earth, was sitting in that crater, its presence pressing into his mind, its voice still echoing in his skull. Daniel was the first to speak. "Mom, it wasn't a meteorite, it was—" He hesitated, his voice trembling. "It was a ship, a broken one, and something was inside." Evelyn's face paled. "A ship?" Lily clutched her mother's arm. "Like a spaceship?" James wiped a hand down his face, finally looking at his wife. "Evelyn, this is serious. There's something out there. It spoke to us, somehow, inside our heads. I don't know what it is, but we can't stay here." Evelyn swallowed hard, staring between her husband and son. "You're not joking." "No," James said firmly. "I wish I was." Daniel took a shuddering breath. "Dad, the sky. When we were running back, there was something up there. I saw it." James nodded. He had seen it too. A faint ripple, like something was looking down on them. And then, it happened again. The lights in the house flickered. Lily let out a small yelp as the bulbs overhead dimmed and brightened erratically. The television snapped on by itself, static hissing across the screen. The radio in the kitchen, which had been turned off for hours, suddenly crackled to life. A signal. A deep, rhythmic pulsing sound echoed from the speakers, repeating in a slow, deliberate pattern. Thump, thump, thump. then a pause, then again. Thump, thump, thump. James's blood ran cold, the same pattern he had seen on the alien symbols back in the crater. James? Evelyn's voice was barely above a whisper. He took a cautious step forward, staring at the flickering screen. The static shifted. Just for a second, an image appeared. Grainy, distorted. A shape. The same glowing white slits he had seen on the creature's face. And then, a sound. Not static, not noise. A word. One spoken in their language this time. A deep, distorted voice. Help! The screen went black. Silence. James felt his entire body go rigid. The others stood frozen, too stunned to speak. Daniel was the first to break the silence. Dad, that thing. He swallowed. It's asking for help. James took a slow breath, his mind racing. If the creature was sending signals, then it wasn't just waking up. It was calling for something. And James had a terrifying feeling that something else was already listening. The house was silent. The only sound was the faint buzzing from the radio, its screen now dark, but still humming with a lingering charge. James's pulse thundered in his ears. Help! The word was still ringing in his mind, hollow and unnatural. Evelyn took a shaky breath. James. What does it mean? What is happening? James didn't have an answer. He turned to Daniel, who was still staring at the blank television screen as if expecting the message to return. Lily clutched Evelyn's arm. Mom, I don't like this. James knelt down beside her, putting a gentle hand on her shoulder. It's okay, sweetheart, he said, though he wasn't sure if that was true. We're going to figure this out. His eyes flickered to the window. The glow from the woods hadn't faded. That thing, whatever it was still out there. But now, James wasn't sure if it was the biggest problem they had. Something else had heard the signal, and it was coming. The sky tiers open. Before James could say anything else, a high-pitched whine cut through the air, not from the house, not from the radio, from outside. James rushed to the window. His stomach dropped. Above the crater, the sky was moving, not just shifting with the clouds. It was bending, warping, like something unseen was pushing through reality itself. The stars beyond distorted, stretching like reflections on water. James barely had time to process it before the air pressure changed. The farmhouse shook violently, rattling everything inside. The plates in the kitchen cabinets crashed to the floor. The lights flickered wildly, and Lily let out a terrified scream. Evelyn grabbed onto her. James, what's happening? James didn't know, but he could feel it. A presence. Something huge was coming. Daniel was still at the window, his breath fogging the glass. His voice was barely a whisper. Dad, look. James followed his son's gaze. The stars were gone, not hidden, not covered by clouds, blotted out. A massive shadow hovered in the sky above the forest, its form impossibly vast, bigger than the entire town of Willowbrook. It had no clear shape, only a dark mass that pulsed with shifting alien lights. A deep, vibrational hum rolled through the air, setting James's teeth on edge. Lily whimpered, hiding her face against Evelyn's chest. Mom, I want to go inside the basement. Evelyn didn't argue. She turned to James, her voice barely controlled. James, we have to leave. James gritted his teeth. Number. If we run, we might be running right into it. The hum grew louder. And then, a beam of light shot down from the sky, striking the crater. The ground trembled violently, dirt and debris lifting into the air, swirling toward the beam like iron to a magnet. Then came the sound, a deep, alien bellow, a roar that wasn't from the ship in the sky, but from the thing in the crater. It was screaming. James's stomach turned to ice. They weren't here to help it. They were here to take it back. A desperate choice. Daniel turned to James, his face pale. Dad, what do we do? James clenched his fists, his mind racing. If that thing was calling for help, and this ship was responding, that meant one of two things. Either it was their ally, or it was their prisoner. And judging by the way it was fighting back, James had a bad feeling it was the latter. The beam of light pulsed, and the alien ship in the sky rumbled, a deep, hollow sound like something awakening from slumber. The thing in the crater lashed out. A surge of blue energy erupted from its body, hitting the beam in an explosion of sparks. The sky rippled, and the ship tilted slightly, as if the impact had hurt it. James made his decision. "We're going back." Evelyn's head snapped toward him. "James, are you insane?" He turned to her, gripping her shoulders. "Listen to me. I don't think that thing is the enemy. I think it's running from whatever's up there. If we don't stop this, we might be handing over something to something way worse." Evelyn hesitated, looking between James, Daniel, and Lily. Then, slowly, she nodded. "We go together." James looked at his children. "Daniel, stay close to me. Lily, hold on to your mom's hand. No matter what happens, we stay together." Daniel swallowed hard and nodded. Lily wiped her tears and clung to Evelyn. The ground shook again, more violently this time. Whatever was happening at that crater, it was coming to an end, and they were going to be right in the middle of it. James led his family through the darkness, moving quickly but carefully toward the crater. The towering mass above them, the alien ship, pulsed with an ominous glow, its deep hum reverberating through the air like a monstrous heartbeat. Every instinct told James to turn back, to take Evelyn, Daniel, and Lily and run as far as possible. But he knew this was no ordinary encounter. This was a battle, and they were about to step straight into the heart of it. The trees bent unnaturally, as if caught in an invisible wind. The sky above them rippled like a disturbed pond, the stars warping and twisting under the presence of the massive vessel, and at the center of it all, the crater. The alien being was fully emerged now, no longer bound by the broken remains of its ship. It was tall, almost 7 feet, with a form that shifted and morphed, its glowing white eyes locked onto the ship above. The symbols along its skin pulsed wildly, moving like digital runes, shifting in rapid succession. It was fighting back, but it was losing. The beam of light from the ship had intensified, pressing down onto the ground like an iron grip. The alien being staggered, its energy flickering. James clenched his fists. He had seen enough. This wasn't a rescue mission from the ship. This was a capture. Making contact. James took a deep breath and stepped forward, raising his hands. "Hey!" he shouted, his voice barely audible over the roaring energy in the air. "Can you hear me?" The alien whipped its head toward him, its shifting face unreadable. The symbols on its skin slowed, recognizing, processing. Daniel, standing beside his father, hesitated before shouting, "You asked for help! We're here! Tell us what to do!" The alien's body pulsed, and James felt something inside his head again. The same strange, deep voice from before. But this time, it wasn't just words. It was images. Flashes of another world. Its world. A city, built of light and energy, stretching across an alien landscape. The sky was filled with swirling golden clouds, and massive crystalline structures pulsed with life. And then, destruction. A fleet of dark ships descending from above. Massive vessels, just like the one hovering over them now. Beams of light rained down, turning the city to ruins. The alien being and others like it were running, fleeing. But they were hunted down, taken, enslaved. The final image seared into James's mind. This very creature, locked inside a containment pod, sent hurtling through the void of space, until it crash-landed here. James staggered back, clutching his head. His eyes met the aliens once more. This wasn't an invasion. This was an escape. And the hunters had found it again. The decision Evelyn ran up beside James. "What is it saying?" James looked at her, then at the sky. "It's running. It's a fugitive. That thing up there." He pointed to the enormous ship. "They're here to take it back, or worse." Daniel's face twisted in horror. "So what do we do?" James turned to the alien. "Can you fight them?" The being hesitated, then slowly shook its head. It was weak. It had spent too much energy just trying to resist. James cursed under his breath. "Then we have to do something before they—" A deafening explosion shook the ground. The beam of light from the ship intensified, pinning the alien to the ground. Its body flickered, barely holding on. Lily screamed, clinging to Evelyn. Daniel grabbed James's arm. "We have to help it. We can't let them take it." James looked around desperately. But what could they do against a ship that massive? Then, the alien reached out toward them, its glowing eyes locking onto James. It was showing him something. Another vision. A pulse. A surge of energy. If they could disrupt the beam just for a moment, it could break free. But it needed help. James didn't hesitate. "Daniel, the flashlight. Give me the flashlight." Daniel quickly unhooked the flashlight from his belt and tossed it to his father. James held it up. "Charge it," he yelled. "Use your energy. Do something. Anything." The alien's eyes flared, and for a brief moment, its energy arced forward, surging into the flashlight. The simple plastic handle glowed white-hot. James turned and hurled it directly at the ship's beam. The moment it made contact, a burst of raw energy detonated. The beam shattered, its power disrupting for just a second. But it was enough. The alien lunged forward, breaking free from the force pinning it down. Its form flared with power, and it turned toward the massive ship in the sky. James, Evelyn, Daniel, and Lily ducked as a wave of energy surged upward. The ship rumbled, a massive shock wave of blue light rippling across its surface. A deep, mechanical howl echoed from the vessel. The sky shuddered as the ship began to pull back, the massive form retreating, flickering, disappearing. And then, the stars returned. The air was still. The ship was gone. The aftermath. Silence fell over the crater. The only sound was their ragged breathing. James slowly turned to the alien. It was kneeling, its energy flickering weakly, but it was alive. It looked at them, looked at him, and slowly, carefully, it raised a hand, a gesture, a thank you. Then its body shimmered, growing faint, until it became nothing but light. And in the blink of an eye, it was gone, vanished into the night. Daniel let out a shaky breath. Did we just help an alien escape?" James exhaled, staring at the empty sky. "I think we did." Evelyn took his hand. "Do you think we'll ever see it again?" James looked at where the alien had disappeared, then up toward the sky. For the first time that night, he smiled. "I don't know," he said, "but I have a feeling. It won't forget us." And somewhere, far beyond the stars, something watched, something remembered, and it wasn't over yet. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more stories like this, hit that like button and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And let me know on which topic you would like to see stories next. And check out these other stories you might enjoy. See you in the next one. Till then, take care and goodbye.